Well, good afternoon. So they gave us a slot after lunch, right? So we have to be a little bit more energized and help us have a really nice conversation today about Blessed are the Peacemakers. My name is Jackie Gomez Whiteley. I'm a police chief for the city of Cypress. Homegrown is right. I was born and raised in Los Alamitos in Cypress. Worked for 23 years at the Orange Police Department, and for the last 5 years I've been at Cypress PD. As importantly, I've been on staff at Golden West College at the Criminal Justice Training Center for approximately 20 years. With me today are my esteemed colleagues. First, I'd like to introduce the coordinator, one of the coordinators at the Criminal Justice Training Center, Colleen Preciado, who in her own right is a trailblazer in law enforcement, as she retired as the chief of the Orange County Probation Department. Joining her in the beautiful purple top is Fullerton Police Sergeant Kathryn Hamel. Thank you for that warm acceptance of my colleagues. So I think I'm stuck, and I like to wander when I talk, so just bear with me here. So what I really want to talk about to open this conversation with you, because this is not going to be a presentation where we just speak with you. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is not going to be one of those... Wait. I'm on. Thank you very much, sir. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be walking around after we do our initial comments for the group, because we want to make this interactive. My experience in training and learning has been that the more interactive, and I'm sure I'm speaking with much better and more qualified educators than myself, but as you know, having some form of engagement, it typically stays with us than the smaller percent of information you would take away if I just stood and did this all day long. So we're not going to do that. We're going to start with what does it mean to be a peace officer? And I do use that term intentionally. Well, that term peace officer, quite frankly, came from a gentleman that was way ahead of his time back in the 1800s, 1829 to be exact. Does anyone know who I might be thinking of? Sir Robert Peel. And Sir Robert Peel is known as the father of modern policing. And he really was ahead of his time. He developed 9 principles of policing. And we affectionately call those Peel's principles. But the one I really want to illuminate today, this afternoon, is the 7th principle. And so that I don't mess it up, I know it, but you know how it is under stress, and you guys are stressing me out. Police are the public, and public are the police. The police being the only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interest of community welfare and existence. So let's think about that for a minute. So we devoted our lives to public service for a living, just like you, but in a slightly different manner, and that's in public safety. Law enforcement is a speck of that, is a piece of the pie. But what Peel is teaching us is it's everybody's responsibility. And if we think about how law enforcement has grown over time, and if I would give you a very quick, abridged version of law enforcement policing history, if I started maybe in the 50s and 60s, that was a time of what? More or less the 60s. Conflict, right? What did the police departments look like? Would we be normally seen as I'm dressed? Probably not. No. Back then, the police departments were made up of typically Caucasian male officers, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just, I'm describing the time in our history. Moving forward, police departments recognize the value of having other men participate in law enforcement. So we had the integration of other ethnicities, Hispanic officers, black officers, etc. And if we get into the 70s, we continue to evolve like many other entities and recognize the importance of women in law enforcement in a frontline position versus being a jail matron, being a secretary, or those types of tasks. And that's important because I say that history repeats itself. Moving forward, we recognize that through growing and evolving, our departments have become more diverse. and we're still striving to better mirror our communities. But what that really opened the door to was us living out to what Peel talked about. The police are the community, and the community are the police. And you're hearing two words about that mean something: community policing. So instead of the old traditional ways that we've grown from in law enforcement, to have the police officers coming in just taking care of whatever the call was or the problem was, we recognize that our role as peacemakers is to be active participants in our communities, to listen to the community, to ask them what their issues are. And as large as Orange County is, every city is a little bit different. Their needs are slightly different. Their challenges are slightly different. We're in Huntington Beach. They're a coastal community. They draw on visitors. Whereas Cypress, we're a smaller community. Fullerton, a completely different community, right? So it's definitely a different way or a different perspective when it comes to law enforcement. Ultimately, what we look at is our mission is to reduce crime and the fear of crime, improving the quality of life, and being there as an active participant in our communities to find out what it is we can do to enhance our communities, which is a long way from back days many, many decades ago, where we would just go and react to whatever the issues were. And I find this really interesting because all three of us are actively involved in many other organizations within law enforcement and outside of law enforcement. One of those is called the Women Leaders in Law Enforcement. And that really started many years ago with a couple of women in Northern California meeting over lunch to talk about issues with women in policing. And from that spawned and grew to conferences, and now in Southern California, we have a Woolly group that meets every month to deal with these things. But it's not women exclusive. What it is to deal with, just like you are, dealing with peace issues. It was to recognize how we can better serve our communities and represent our communities. But a minute ago, I was talking to you guys, talking to the group in regards to how we've evolved and changed and how we're there to teach and mentor one another. What was fantastic about Woolly is we had an opportunity last year in the fall when a group of women police officers from Tajikistan reached out to us. They heard about the conference. So through a wonderful group called the Emergence Group in New York, they came to our conference. And after that, we were able to facilitate a couple days visits in Northern California and Southern California to our communities and to our police departments, to meet our city council members and to see what community governance looks like and works. And what's interesting is, guess what their job as police officer, peace officers in Tajikistan is? Anybody want to throw a guess out there? Administrators, exactly. Thank you for playing. You're educators. You know the rules. You're on the other side. You're supposed to participate. Come on now. We're going to get it out of you before we're done, I promise. And we're going to do it willingly, I promise. This is, after all, a peace conference, right? Yes, the women from Tajikistan were also relegated to those positions of helping with juvenile issues and literally working in the office and typing out paperwork. So it is amazing. Having been in this career for almost 4 decades, I started as a teenager, and all of that time matters because it's helped form who I am today. But it's amazing through those 4 decades to watch what has evolved and occurred, and now to see, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be meeting women from another country and inspiring them, or having the opportunity to learn from them as well, because they were as much of an inspiration to us as we were to them. So I'm going to close so that we can try to make up for some lost time and get us back on track. And I'm going to turn it over to one of my colleagues, and that's going to be Sergeant Kathryn Hamel.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having the 3 of us here to come and present before you. We are honored to be here, and I am honored to be talking to you about how we sustain peace within our communities. And part of being a peacemaker, as Chief Whiteley just so eloquently stated, is engagement, and it's involvement in your communities and involvement in the issues. So one thing that peace officers are responsible to do are to care for their victims. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but for those of you that have known those that have been victimized, there's a sense of confusion, perhaps loss. There may be some physical injury. There certainly at times are emotional injuries that occur when one has been victimized. So one area that law enforcement has evolved over the last 30 years or so is the area of victims' rights. And I'm going to start with a little story about how that came to be. In the 70s, there was a case, and it was Linda v. Richard. And that was a federal case where it was established for the very first time that citizens of communities could not bring charges against one another, that it was the responsibility of the district attorney to bring criminal charges in any case. And that's important because at the time, victims of crimes had no rights. They had no rights to be present during any of the hearings. They had no rights to know when their suspect or their defendant was released from custody. And they had no rights to be present to make what we now call a victim impact statement. So why do you think those things are important? Why is it important for victims to be a part of the criminal justice system and a part of bringing peace to their communities? Absolutely. You said to feel safe, correct? Sir, you in the back? Feeling? Okay. Healing. Oh, I'm so sorry. Healing, absolutely. So part of that healing process is involvement in the criminal justice process. And one way that we try to assist our victims is by not only ensuring that they are notified of when their offenders are released from custody, but also by ensuring that they receive restitution. And restitution can be in the form of monetary, and it can also be in the form of services. So victims require services oftentimes, and the story that I alluded to just a few moments ago started in 1983. And a young lady by the name of Marcy Nicholas was murdered by her boyfriend on the campus of UC Santa Barbara. She was killed with a shotgun blast to the face, and she was killed by her estranged boyfriend. So her estranged boyfriend was soon after arrested, and the parents, obviously grieving, had no idea that within a matter of 72 hours, their daughter's killer would be released from custody. So as they're walking out of their home, and they're walking out of their residence, they run into the man who had just killed their daughter. Could you imagine the shock and the grief? The family had no idea. So fast forward to 1984. The Victims of Crime Act established a Crime Victims Fund. So for the first time, this was the first opportunity for victims to receive monetary restitution for the losses that they had suffered. And again, as we go on, approximately every 10 years, there was an evolvement of victim services. In 1994, the Violence Against Women Act ensured that not only victims would receive restitution, but that they would also receive training and education and how to be a better participant in the criminal justice process. So again, fast forward, and 2007, the Orange County Chiefs of Police, working with the Orange County Sheriff's Association, developed a victim services protocol. And this protocol ensured that all Orange County law enforcement was trained to handle the needs of victims. And part of that meant making sure that these victims had resources, making sure that they knew where to go when they needed restitution, making sure that they had an advocate assigned to them to help them through the criminal justice process. Because as I said earlier, that's a very confusing time for anyone. So assistance in navigating that was critical for allowing victims to have some closure in their process. So, as I mentioned earlier, Marcy Nicholas, she had been murdered in 1983, as I said. And with the assistance of Orange County Supervisor Todd Spitzer in 2008, Marcy's Law was drafted. And Marcy's Law essentially gives victims what we now call a Victim's Bill of Rights. So victims now have the ability to receive restitution. They have the ability to be present at all hearings that are public. And they have the ability to give an impact statement. So they're able to get closure and find some peace when they are allowed to face their defendant in a court of law. So all of those things started with not only peaceful communities, but they also started as the result of grassroots efforts such as the one here. So those of you that are here, you care about your communities, you want your communities to be safe, and as such, you've all come together, and that's how you can affect change. So I am going to close and turn it over to Colleen Preciado. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I also am very pleased to be with you. Talking about peace officers and peacekeeping is really the heart and soul of what the probation department offers to the community. And I spent 35 years as a probation officer here in Orange County. I worked with many of the agencies that Chief Gomez-Whiteley talked about. Probation officers have the responsibility to pick up where the police and the justice system sort of leave off. We bat third in the process. When the police find that someone has committed a crime, whether they be adult or juvenile, and then the prosecutor takes them to court, they have their day in court, and then the judge issues a particular sentence for that person, the lion's share of sentences in the United States is a person released to the custody and control of a probation officer. Now, part of that, for their crime, they may have to serve some time in a juvenile hall or a jail for punishment and rehabilitation. But once that's done and they get released, they're assigned to a probation officer. Now think about when I first became a probation officer, which I can tell you, when I was in high school and junior high and all that, I had no idea that's where I would end up in life. I thought I was going to be a marine biologist. I came to college here in the early 70s. Yes, we represent 3 generations of women in law enforcement. I am the elder of the group. And I came here because I wanted to be a marine biologist. I wanted to work with Jacques Cousteau, okay, and study marine life. But I had to do some volunteer work. I had to do some community service for my SOCH 100 class. And so I did it at LA County Probation. And I was absolutely compelled after that experience to see the fragile nature of humanity and what can happen when someone, another human being, interacts with a person who is on a bad road or a bad path in life. And they need someone to reach out and pull them out of that hole before they get so far down they can no longer be reached and pulled out into safety. And that's kind of what probation officers do. We supervise the offender, we work with the victims, make sure that they get their restitution, but trying to get that offender to choose different behaviors so that they do not lead a life of crime. So that when you leave here today, your car has not been broken into, your iPhone has not been stolen, someone has not stolen your precious car that's out there, or someone doesn't bump you on the head walking out of here. We try to get people to become more compassionate. What do you think the biggest deficit, based upon what I just described, because remember, crime, usually there's a victim, right? Somebody's been harmed. They've stolen your identity, they've stolen your money, they've hurt you, they've done something to you, right? What do you think the #1 character trait of someone that gets involved in the justice system is? And it's not drugs and alcohol. Very prevalent, but that's not the #1 character trait. Anybody want to take a guess? Say they assault people. That's an act. Anxiety. I'm sorry? Anxiety. Prior to their crime, anxiety is building, yes. And then the anxiety needs to be released. They commit the crime. Yes? Revenge, yes. Again, an act, an emotion. Yes. Isolation, all of the above. Isolation from what? Other people, from love, from coping skills. Yes. Okay, number 2 is it. Lack of compassion for others. They lack empathy. That is why they can look at you and smile and steal your purse off your shoulder. That is why they can lie to your face and you're shocked that that friend that you had for many, many years lied to your face and stole something of importance to you. That's why you see in the paper where you have the auditor or the controller of a large corporation, and then all of a sudden they've extorted all of the company funds. That's why you can see the soccer organizations where the soccer mom or dad steals all the money from the kids. They lack empathy, the ability to feel pain for another human being. And why is that? They didn't get it. They didn't get the proper way to deal with anxiety, stresses, coping mechanisms. They resort quickly to resolution with conflict, anger. They lack compassion. One of the most successful programs that we were able to bring to the probation department, and it wasn't new, we just were smart enough to follow someone else's lead, is in our juvenile hall, we brought in a puppy adoption program. Puppies get dropped off at shelters, and they're without their mother, and the shelters, then hopefully someone adopts those puppies. But when they're very tiny, sometimes they don't survive. They need to be socialized, just like human beings. So we partnered up with a nonprofit, and this woman would go to the shelter and find puppies that would be suitable to bring into our juvenile hall, and we would assign 1 or 2 puppies into a housing unit with the kids, and they would have to learn how to socialize the puppy. Now, who do you think benefits most from that process? The dogs definitely do, without question. But the kids, because why? They see this tiny life that is completely dependent upon their kindness. There's an educational program that goes with it about feeding an animal, taking care of them, and all the parallels are drawn. But that's what needs to happen with fellow human beings also. Kids and their victimization starts to come forward, and we're able, in a very safe setting, to turn people's lives around because we turn them around from the inside. Their decision-making starts to change. They can cope better. They make better choices. Just some funny stories, in a sad way, about how people end up on probation. Imagine this. You're in line at the local McDonald's, minding your own business, getting your breakfast before you go to work, and behind you is a guy on probation, and he just doesn't have very good coping skills. And he sees you as being in his way because he's got to get out to get to work, because if he doesn't get to work, his probation officer is going to be very mad at him. Okay? So he sees you in the way and starts looking over your shoulder, say, excuse me, could you just please hurry up? Please, it's my turn. I need to go. I'm in a hurry. I have to get to my job. And in doing so, shoves a 75-year-old person out of the way. They hit the ground, and the person just looks, gets their coffee, and leaves. And nobody in the store helps that person get up. What kind of community is that? How about when you leave today and someone cuts you off on the freeway? What's your first reaction? Or is it, hey, no problem, nobody got hurt, I'm good? What have we become when our first reaction demonstrates we have lost the ability to cope with stress? And someone who's just one up to me. You can't do that to me. I'm not going to allow you to do that to me. Revenge. All those kinds of emotions that happen. People on probation have those on steroids. And they cycle through and through and through many times over. And probation officers are trying to teach them a more compassionate way to deal with stress in life. The role that drugs and alcohol play is when they start early, they suppress all of the feelings and the stress with drug and alcohol. So they never have to go through the process of being frustrated and learning how to control it. They drink or use drugs to control it. So someone generally we see that starts abusing drugs and alcohol when they're about 16 or 17 and they don't stop. They're not just a, gee, what's this like? Okay, I'm not doing that anymore kind of person. They keep doing it over time. They generally have an emotional area of their life that stops developing at that start of the drug use because it's suppressed. They never have to learn to cope with the typical things you've learned to cope with: failure, disappointment, those kinds of things. And then it evolves into that level of anxiety, and then they harm someone to release the anxiety. So we've made a science out of it, and we train probation officers to know how to deal with that. Probation in Orange County, and I think statewide, but in Orange County, I'm proud to say, does a very fine job of delivering programs that really get to the heart of the matter, to try to turn out people less likely to harm others once they're done with their probation program. And for those people who really we see are extremely dangerous, we put them back into custody. So the rest of us are protected. And that's the balance of the system. So I know you probably all have all kinds of questions about what probation does, but what we want to do is we want to get you involved. We believe that, particularly to our dean of our Criminal Justice Training Center is here, Ron Lowenberg, and through a partnership with the Golden West College and the faculty here, we also have the Leadership and Ethics Institute. And in that program, which was developed initially from a person by the name of Michael Josephson, and it talks about how you develop character. And in many of the elementary schools now and the junior highs, they have curriculum called Character Counts. And it's teaching kids how to be kinder, how to be nicer, teaching kids about why bullying is so destructive, with tragic results in many cases. And so in the Leadership and Ethics Institute, it's also a fundamental of how we train all of the people that come into the Criminal Justice Training Center programs. And I know it's an adopted character that Golden West College seeks to have not only amongst its employees, but also the students that we all work together. Because that's what makes Golden West College and all of our affiliates that are here with us today a compassionate community. We take personal ownership. It is an ethical obligation to be a good community member. And it's a choice, isn't it? I choose to be a good person and do the right thing, or I choose not to. Let's not deny that. Let's recognize it's a choice, and what a blessed choice it is that we have these freedoms in America where we live here. We can choose to go to the schools we want. We can choose to be the person we feel we are. We can choose to make a contribution. We can choose to be police. We have police chief women. That was unheard of. Men can be what they want to be. People can, and we are diverse. Look around the room, and we can exist together and celebrate that diversity. It's a reflection of who we are in this community, and part of that is the character that lies within each person. And our character is demonstrated by action. Know me by my actions, not by my words. So today what we want to do is get your brains thinking about that in your own circumstance. So we have developed some little scenarios, if you will, for you. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Chief Gomez Whiteley for a second to have her talk some more with you. And Sergeant Hamel and I will walk around and give you these scenarios. We'd like you to take about 10 minutes, chew on these, talk about them, get excited about them, debate them with one another, and make some decisions. And then we're going to go around and ask a person from your table to stand up and tell us what your scenario was about, what was the conversations you had, And what were some of the decisions you've made about this very thing? Okay, turn that over.
So I'm going to come full circle. Thank you, Colleen. She talked about the importance and our responsibility. Thank you, yes. To be compassionate communities, but I want to speak for a moment while these are being passed out. With regard to, okay, well that's very well, but if we started with the whole concept of Peel, recognizing the police of the public, that we're all in this together, that we're the only paid people that are supposed to make our communities safer, well, how do we know if the police are compassionate? How do we know that? Well, let me give you an answer to that. At the Golden West College Criminal Justice Training Center, we're one of the lead agencies in developing a community policing academy with the tenets of community policing in it. And we were the leaders in that. And I'll tell you something else that's very interesting because it just happened to me this week. So I teach the Basic Academy and some other classes there as well. Teach leadership and ethics. And we teach it 3 different times. It's interwoven. I actually facilitate a conversation a few times, but it's interwoven in all the classes. But what was really interesting, we always start with getting to know one another, and I want to hear from the recruits, your future police officers and public servants. Why do they become police officers, and what do they want to be said when they retire? What's really interesting is they're in it for the same reason we are, to help people, and they recognize the importance of compassion. And so when we talk about the topics of today of peace conference and compassionate communities and how do we make that difference, the peace officers are just like you. We're coming from the same pool in our communities. We're just committed to making this our living and trying to ensure and enhance the safety within our communities. So if you could take a few minutes and read and discuss amongst yourselves the different scenarios that have been placed in front of you. We're going to give you a few minutes to do that, and then we're going to turn it over to you, because we want to hear what your thinking is, and what the topics are, and what feedback you have to provide to us. Thank you.
We'd like to, in the interest of time, if we can kind of gather back now, and I'm going to start picking on somebody to give us a report out. And so bearing in mind, whoever I pick on, you get to pick the next person that has to speak, okay? So if anybody wants to go first, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm just going to pick somebody. Okay, I'm going to pick this table right here because they were really fun to talk to. And what I'd like you to do is just get up and tell us what you talked about. What was significant about your conversation? What was the question you had to deal with? And can we get everybody's attention? Can we get everyone's attention? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to you. Tell us the question you had to deal with and what did you talk about?
Hi, my name is Eric Uska, and our little group got together. We discussed how does the justice system implement peacemaking strategies to manage crime and create a safe community for us to live in and enjoy. Well, what we discovered is that the justice system kind of works like Jedis in a way from Star Wars. They use their what's it called? Yeah, they use the Force. Yeah. What? They don't use Force. They use a different kind of Force. Yeah. But they use, like, before they pull out their lightsabers or something, they use the mind games, and they have to calm them down or something in a soft way. So we were also thinking of how we can, instead of like getting people to, instead of doing graffiti, maybe getting some of them to do murals, drawing murals on walls instead. And so that will help promote peace through the community through images on walls. And that's about it.
Okay, where's Chief Gomez Whiteley? Where's Chief? Okay, I so love the metaphor with Star Wars. May the Force be with you. A different kind of Force. I love that. That is great. Okay. Okay.
I've got a group over here that's ready when you guys are. I beat you to it.
Yes, ma'am, you did.
You're being very polite. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Our issue that we talked in our group was what is fair and impartial policy, and why is it important for community members to be involved in helping the police achieve peaceful resolutions to conflict. We believe that some fair and impartial policing that the police use is, for example, when they're in the scene of the crime and they deal with the person who committed the crime, they make sure that the police make sure that they don't treat them along the stereotypes. For example, a person who's black, maybe the stereotype is like they're a menace to society, but in reality, who knows what they're actually dealing with. That's what we were talking about, and we should treat those criminals with more respect because we don't know what they are going through. And so that's what we believe is what is fair and as a fair policy. The involvement of the community, why it's important, is because we need to make sure that what the police does has the support from the community. But yet at the same time, we have to make sure that what the police does is lawful and makes sure that everything, that it has the support of the community, and they have to make sure that they're that they do what they do in a manner that is supported by everyone in the community.
Thank you. Those are some great thoughts, Adrian. And you know what's funny is, not funny, but ironic is when you talk about the support of the community, that we do it just like coming to you today. We build support in the community by being transparent, by explaining things and educating the community about the importance. When you talk about fair and impartial policing, part of our job, believe it or not, is to find information and bring it forward to the court that proves that they may not have done it. It's called exculpatory evidence. So that's the level of commitment we have to compassionate, fair policing.
Yes, ma'am.
She wants to go next, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And just to touch on a little bit about what Chief Gomez-Whiteley was just talking about, one of the things that we are also tasked with as police officers in keeping peaceful communities, and it was brought up by this table here, is we are objective fact finders. We do not take sides. We are impartial, and that is our commitment when we are investigating or on scene of any case, crime, or incident. So that was an excellent subject that you brought up. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. You would like to go. Your question. Got it? Beat me. I'm trying. Navigate.
Because our table is fortunate to have Professor Jafari with us, Jafari? Did I say that right? Or I'm tempted to say Safari, my error, my correction. But because we have Professor Jafari with us, we chose number 3. A student gets the best grade in class by cheating. Not that this applies to any of the students in this room, of course not, other people. But one of the questions that we asked, someone in our table asked was the cheating proven or assumed? And Professor Jafari mentioned us a few situations where it was proven. And then we went on to the next question, was there a standard in place that it's not permissible? Because without a standard in place, I would not observe red, yellow, and green lights in an intersection. That's a vehicular standard. But having a standard in place, I think, helps students know that it's not acceptable. We explored the ways to cheat, with the new device in the ear and everything, but we also talked about the rationalization. And so what we came up with is really having a standard in place. And something that I just thought of after our conversation stopped was, I remember when I got the opportunity, that's a nice way of saying it, to raise my children alone, there was a package of, yeah, my husband disappeared. Anyway, but when the set that I learned from the most was something from Neuropsychology of Successful Parenting that taught me love the child, or in this case, student, but discipline the behavior. So if we use the compassion that you lady leaders in law enforcement are inspiring us to do, we can, hold respect for the student and yet separate what they did from who they are. So hopefully at their young, precious, tender, raw age as a student, they don't take it personal. And then we can set some standards and inspire them to do right. So if we can, instill 20/20 foresight, they can see, you cheat, you go down this path. You take the higher road, you'll reap what you sow.
Well said. Well said.
The maximum problem I face is about getting a traffic ticket. And never a woman, always given by men, and sometimes, and sometimes not even my fault. I have entered the intersection on the green signal, it changes to yellow and quickly to red, and I get a ticket, and that is taken by camera. But how smart they are, they don't show the beginning that I entered when it was green. They show only the end when I get the email. This is not fair, and I have paid unnecessarily, and insurance also has gone up. So please, women, help out.
Well, Asha, good thing you didn't meet me about 20 years ago. I rode a motorcycle, and that's all I did for a living is write tickets. But you can ask now, technology's gotten better. We actually have it on video, and it does now show, and it addresses your concerns. So that's how quick we are to resolve your issues. It's on video, so you can see before, during, and after. Okay, the next group. You're going to be the next group?
Okay, we were given, my name is Sandra Basabe, by the way. We were given 7 different incidents. One, we tried to answer all of them really quickly and precise as much as we could. The first one, a person accidentally bumps into another person while waiting in line to get into a movie theater. In order for us to answer in a compassionate world, how would people react to the following scenario? We took the 2 sides. The first side, it would be how would normally people react to that scenario? Maybe they would be really angry and say, hey, why did you bump on me? Be careful, don't you see? In a compassionate way, it would be completely the opposite. It should be to understand that it was an accident. A simple accident. Understanding is leading to what? Being compassionate. Number 2. Oh, okay. I'm gonna elaborate a little bit on what the lady, I don't remember her name, but she was talking about cheating in a classroom. I'm an instructor too. So, in a compassionate world, how would an instructor react to a student who's cheating? You're right, we have a set of standards, we have a syllabus, and we have to teach them that they need to respect what they sign, that is the syllabus. But also, instructors, we as instructors, we have to be compassionate. They are learning, and the way to show that we can learn is we need to show them the consequences of cheating. That's truth. I'm not going to take the 0 out of it, out of the exam. Definitely not. But if I would be not compassionate, I could say, oh, I can make it worse. I can go and report that student to the VP of instruction. I can damage the record of the student, and I can make in that student not a lesson to learn, but instead a really bad experience for that student. A compassionate instructor would never do that. That compassionate instructor would sit down with the person and say, I'm not going to take the 0. That's the consequence of what you did. So when you are a professional, take that into consideration. Whenever you cheat, you're gonna hit really bad consequences. The consequences is a 0. But I'm gonna be compassionate. I'm gonna give you a second chance. Correct your issue, don't do it again, and I'm not gonna say anything. This is in between you and me. That's what I would do.
Thank you for sharing. You know, her example illustrates challenges that we deal with. How many are parents and instructors and police officers? And it's about, I really liked what you said a moment ago about it's people and behavior. And we can focus on the behavior because we have to be careful that we're not enabling dysfunctional or destructive behavior. And so how we respond to these things becomes very important. And the wisdom we have and the discretion that we use to make those decisions, whether it's a police officer deciding whether or not to write a ticket, whether it's a professor deciding how to handle a potential cheating situation, or whether it's us as parents trying to help our children when they make a mistake. It's all about wisdom and discretion, and it's really compassionate leadership that cuts through all of these different examples now, doesn't it? Okay, I'm going to turn it over.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would love to talk with all of you for the next couple hours about these things, but in the interest of time, we are going to have to wrap it up. So I invite you to continue to think about these things even after today, because I do believe you're here for a reason. I think that you made a choice to be here today, and with that choice comes a responsibility to do something with what was presented to you by everyone today. We cannot be better as a whole unless we're better as individuals, because as individuals we create that whole. So today we had a lot of education from each other. We shared ideas and thoughts. We heard from really very esteemed speakers. But I wanted to leave you with just a couple quotes. Robert Frost said, "Education is the ability to listen to almost anything without losing your temper or your self-confidence." And I like to add to that, or lose your self-control. And Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." So in a compassionate community, we listen to other people's ideas. It doesn't mean I have to accept it, but I'm willing to listen, because maybe I'll learn something. Maybe between the two of us, we come up with a better way to live among one another. And we can be that role model. So what we would like you to do is, before you leave, take about 5 minutes, and I know you still have other speakers, but as we gather our things to move on to our next area of responsibility. Are you working graveyard tonight? She worked graveyard last night. She's got to go. She didn't get enough sleep. I know this. I don't know how she does it. And you're busy, and wow. We're all busy, aren't we? We're just busy doing different things. So if you would, write down on a piece of paper and commit to one behavior where you can be a more compassionate person. Just one. And commit to it. Commit to that inside yourself. Be true to yourself when you make that commitment, because that will exponentially affect the people around you. Your family, your neighbors, your students, your loved ones, your friends, your coworkers, all those people that you don't even know. The stranger that you walk up to. Do you smile at them or do you scowl? A smile is very disarming, I have learned. And I shared with this table here something that my grandmother taught me. Did you guys like it? You'll never forget it, will you, huh? Good, okay, they were my test table. My grandmother shared with me when I was, and I have a very dear friend here that I've known since high school, Bob Franklin. He knew my grandmother. My grandmother told me once, she said, "Honey, when you walk into a room in life, do you want to be an aroma or do you want to be an odor?" It's a choice. Thank you very much.